Hi everyone, Jenna here. I wanted to share a short video to explain the last couple of videos for anyone who has found this channel helpful, for anyone who might be finding this in the future. What has this been all about? So, what you are finding here are the remnants of my exploration of a spiritual lineage from India, the lineage of Swami Kaleshwar. This lineage happened to hold important spiritual technology on the planet that myself and some other souls have used. However, this is high spiritual technology that requires a very advanced level of integration related to consciousness, source intelligence, understanding the source mechanics of existence and how the mechanics of existence inform the unfolding of physical reality. These high spiritual technologies have been used by various master level souls throughout time. These high spiritual technologies were also unveiled in recent modern times by the man known as Kaleshwar, who is a very powerful being. And this very powerful being used these technologies and brought them to a lot of students and delivered a lot of teachings to students about the ability to gain supernatural powers and the ability to affect physical reality in supernatural ways and to heal people in supernatural ways. However, sometimes that spiritual journey that we find ourselves on can turn into a journey of spiritual narcissism. So, what has been happening with this channel is an audit of that lineage. What started as part of my awakening process in this lifetime and my seeking of my true self and my true soul and wanting to utilize various spiritual tools and wisdom to find my truest self and to embody that most healed, empowered version of myself that I can be. And as my spiritual vision quest unfolded, which started as a shamanic spiritual vision quest in many ways, learning about deep communion with nature and learning about how to utilize my expanding psychic abilities to see different truths about my soul and to also perceive ego distortions that I had been carrying that I needed to heal and release and transform. And that journey took me to the lineage of Kaleshwar. I found that lineage in I think early 2023 and had a very, very, very immediate recognition of that lineage and knew that I was meant to engage with it. And I knew deep in my soul that these spiritual technologies were something that I could utilize and benefit from and were part of my mission on this planet, whatever that mission was. And I was still in a process of being guided to better understand what sort of leadership, am I here to offer this world above and beyond what I had experienced at Whole Foods Market. I became a global vice president at the age of 30 at a very young age, and knew that that wasn't all that was for me in this lifetime. And as my spiritual awakening progressed in a very profound and fast way, I started having these downloads and started having this very strong sense of guidance, of divine intelligence and guidance from somewhere off this planet that was starting to help me understand where I was meant to go in this life. And so I started having a lot of supernatural experiences, and the lineage of Kaleshwar has demonstrated a lot of supernatural things. However, supernatural things can occur in a way that's forced or can occur in a way that's very natural and graceful in this universe. As I found this lineage, it became clear very quickly that while I was meant to contribute in some way for some of the souls in this lineage and to help in some ways to contribute my wisdom and knowledge as time went on, it also became very clear that part of my role was to bring the Kali energy and to participate in a death process related to this lineage, because this lineage has not always upheld the highest tenets of source virtue that would be required to utilize these spiritual technologies. Throughout thousands of years on this planet, many humans have found themselves subject to various ego distortions and desires for control, desires to play a certain role, desires to look a certain way, desires to have a leadership position over other people. There has been a very, very long term battle with the darkness on this planet, and that darkness has infiltrated a lot of our consciousness as humans, and that creates a situation where we have people who want to be gurus, we have people who want to be masters, we have people who want to demonstrate certain things, and that's all ego. Usually that's all ego. And yet Kaleshwar had an opportunity. Kaleshwar had an opportunity to share some of the truths regarding the spiritual technologies and wisdom that master avatars like Jesus have utilized in the past to activate their source alignment and to activate their highest soul blueprint. These spiritual technologies are meant to really just do that. They're really meant to just help us activate our highest soul blueprint and our highest connection to source intelligence. When we start utilizing them beyond that, we're really starting to get into sorcery. And, you know, when a powerful being shows up and is able to demonstrate powerful things, you know, a lot of humans have fallen victim to that because they think that everything about that being must be, you know, purely divine because they're demonstrating all of these miracles that humans can't do. Powerful beings can alter and transform reality. Powerful beings can do that from the light or the dark. Okay? Like, we have to be wide awake to this. And Kaleshwar had an opportunity to walk a path of redemption, quite frankly, in the life that he led, where he was delivering some of the spiritual technologies and some wisdom related to Jesus. He did not do a very good job of teaching some of the tenets of Jesus's wisdom and teachings. You know, Jesus operated in a way that was about grace, that was about pure, divinely aligned flow and divine will moving through him. He did not engage in some of the sorcery that Kaleshwar did. When I look at some of the experiences that have unfolded in this lineage, and I'll just name some here for those who want the recap. You know, what I have found is a lot of people who are very obsessed with power and who are very obsessed with magic and who are very obsessed with what humans call miracles. Miracles happen every day. Miraculous transformation is a tenet of the universe. Physical reality can instantly transform depending on our consciousness and depending on the will of Source and the will of the highest divine blueprint that is in place. Kaleshwar, as a teacher, demonstrated some things that wooed a lot of humans. And we've had a history on this planet of humans finding themselves wanting to worship powerful beings. When a being shows up and demonstrates something that is above and beyond what a human has either experienced or thinks to be possible, then that human will just, you know, bow down to that being and not question what else might be going on. And also, certain powerful beings have the ability to gain power over others very easily because his consciousness was operating in a much higher state than the consciousness of his students. Yet there was a lot of shadow present with him that his students or teachers could not see because they were entangled with him, with karma. A lot of people want to believe that a powerful being like Kaleshwar could not have negative karma. That is not true. He just happens to be a powerful being who had an opportunity to walk a path of redemption on this earth, which he did not do very well in his lifetime. Yes, he healed some people. He also engaged in sorcery. And the Divine Mother, the source of this universe, does not enjoy her children engaging in sorcery. And there's been a lot of that happening on this planet for a long time. Let me be very clear that a lot of the ritual and processes and practices of this lineage that have been about seeking a certain state and seeking certain abilities, what a lot of people have been engaging in is sorcery. They are not actually just allowing Source to guide them and show them their highest blueprint and self. They are attempting to force something by engaging in these practices and processes in the very intense way that this lineage has taught. Some of these things that I'm about to reference happened a long time ago, but the teachers of this lineage have continued to perpetuate Kaleshwar's teachings as though that is the highest law of the universe, and those teachings are not. You can find nuggets of wisdom in them. Yes, I did. I'm grateful for that. And there's a lot of incoherent trash in his teachings. Let me just say that. There's a lot of incoherent garbage in his teachings that shows me, like the lack of coherence he was operating with. When someone feels like they need to demonstrate the life and death process by killing a bird and bringing it back to life to show that sort of power to their students, that's sorcery, you guys. That's literally sorcery. Jesus didn't do that shit. Jesus brought someone back to life because that was the will of God. He didn't fucking kill people to demonstrate that. Like, these are the sorts of things that students have just been like, oh my God, like, wow, like, no, no, Jesus didn't do that. Jesus would not do that. And what everyone in this lineage has had an opportunity to wake up to is, number one, that they're not alone in this universe, and that the creation they talk about is way bigger than like this planet, and that there are other powerful beings who have infiltrated this planet and who have engaged with this planet and who have had karma with this planet and who have been incarnating on this planet for a very long time. That was wake-up call number one for this lineage, which most people in this lineage, the highest level teachers, have not understood. A lot of the students have at this point. Number two, people have had the opportunity to wake up to the differences. If this lineage has been all about Jesus's practices and Jesus's power and Jesus's spiritual technology and utilizing that to become like Jesus, what about Kaleshwar is like Jesus? Very fucking little, pardon my language. We're still in a death process. We're still in a death process. And one of the distortions related to these sorts of lineages and cults and the mindset that they start to develop is this idea of divinity being this like state of passivity and pure peace all the time and not engaging with their own darkness. Like talking about the negativity as though it's something out there and something to protect from, rather than understanding the actual mechanics of how the shadow works within a being and within a group. This lineage has had an opportunity to awaken to a very different way of operating that is not sorcery. And this lineage failed in a very big way, And as I watched what was going on, I have not really participated in the lineage for maybe a year and a half. Like I kind of I was participating for a few months. I got what I needed and then I got out because I knew that was important. I knew that there was some wisdom I needed to gather and then I just needed to get out. And then I popped back in from time to time just to kind of see what was going on with different aspects of the lineage. stayed connected to some different people throughout time. And and yet for me, this has been an ongoing process of continuing to perceive, like where this lineage has been out of alignment in relation to the true blueprint of Jesus and the teachings and practices of Jesus in this world. And for my process, for my soul's evolution in this world, as I have continued to engage different aspects of planetary karma and my own karmic resolution process on this planet, that has continued to pull me back at times to the Kaleshwar lineage, because I would have greater insight or perception related to something I had seen or something I had witnessed or engaged with, that then is helping me understand the bigger picture of what sort of like viral parasitic consciousness patterns that we might have running on this planet as cults. So I've mentioned Jesus a couple of times because, what Jesus demonstrated was a pure flow with Source and a purely embodied will of Source, rather than a constant manufactured energetic experience or a constant manipulation of energy to show things or make things happen in physical reality. Yeah, Jesus allowed a few things to happen in physical reality for the good of all. If some healings happened, some food got multiplied for people because it was a need that was being filled. That's different. Like those sorts of miracles are different than the pure power play miracles that the Kaleshwar lineage has been obsessed with. When a lineage feels like they need to make a cross bleed to access some energy, that's sorcery. That's actually not a purely divine process, and you need to know that. Yes, divine objects can produce liquid, amruta, blood, that can happen spontaneously, but it happening spontaneously is an act of grace. It happening in a forced way is an act of sorcery. And so as time has gone on, it's been very clear to me that, part of my power was tied up in this lineage. Part of my, duty and dharma on this planet has been to speak truth from time to time, to engage in a power reclamation process and call for the dissolution of this lineage, call for the dissolution of any cults running on this planet that have assumed a level of power that is unnatural, that has been negatively affecting certain souls and actually preventing the liberation of certain souls. It's funny when these lineages spring up and they are talking about soul liberation, and they're talking about, these concepts, but they really don't understand what that looks like in a human body. I'm liberated. I'm liberated, and I just get to live my life now. I'm liberated in a way where my soul doesn't come back to this planet, and I know that because I know a lot about my soul, and I know what my soul has done on this planet. I know what my soul has done off of this planet to some degree. We can't access everything. That's too much for the human mind, but we can access a lot that helps us understand where are we at, in our journeys. And when we haven't actually accessed that information, we're just pretending, we're putting on a show, we're putting on a mask, we're putting on a performance. And a lot of spiritual teachers do that because they're seeking. And, there's nothing wrong with seeking and then sharing about your journey. And that's what I did for a long time. I did a lot of that on Star Family Wisdom and here because I was seeking. I was in this process of trying to figure out, what is my soul doing here on this planet? And, what about my soul can I remember and integrate and access? And also, what about the larger cosmic picture am I remembering and integrating that doesn't quite fit the picture of some of these lineages and what they're teaching? So we can, use spiritual lineages as a springboard, as a tool, to help us in our journey of finding our true selves and becoming our true selves in this world, or they can hold us back and they can actually make us really diminished, and they can actually make us like put in this cage. And that's a lot of what I've seen, with the Kaleshwar lineage. Not every student, of course, but like there's some that have really bought into the idea of trying to become masters through what this lineage has taught, and they are in a cage. They are in a fucking prison, pardon my language again. That's how liberated I am. Like, I don't feel like I have to do we have to be perfectly peaceful and perfect, Like, there's all of these consciousness programs that run in these lineages that really are traps, that are really liberation traps, and just keep you in a loop. And I've posted a few videos recently on Instagram where I was talking more candidly about certain aspects of the lineage and calling out some of the malpractice and some of the ways in which this lineage needs to die. And the cool thing about that is that the spiritual truth of our souls never dies. The true cosmic mechanics of this universe never dies. The true healing practices of this world, of this universe, of this world, that are about opening to the grace of Source and coming into our highest state of harmony and working with nature to find that harmony, like that never dies. When this lineage goes away and only, like a small amount of people are accessing the tools and information of this lineage in the future, that's really how it's meant to be. Like, these technologies are not for everyone. Like, you really don't need them. Like, you really don't need them unless you're here performing like a specialized mission, or truly like attempting to reach some of the absolute highest states of consciousness. But that requires you to not do sorcery. That requires you to actually look at your soul and understand like why you've been doing the things you've been doing. And so, in some previous videos, I was a little heated in some ways, at least the Instagram ones, partially because of this death process that's been occurring, and partially because of the way Source intelligence moves through me now, and the way that does not get hidden. And I can't suppress it when that happens. And what's awesome about Source is that Source is the full range of experience. Source is the full range. And a lot of what gets taught in these lineages is a small range of experience, and this forced suppression of emotion, of expression, of being our full selves out of fear of negativity or fear of being something that is not the perfectly programmable peaceful image of a guru or yogi or whatever. And so, we also have to deeply examine all of these like parts of ourselves that have gotten caught up in these sorts of lineages, out of the idea of an image, out of the idea of needing to save others, out of the idea of being like spiritually superior to others, out of your own spiritual narcissism because you're like not willing to engage with life or yourself. There's a lot of ways that these sorts of like rituals and practices can absolutely crack open our soul and help us see our deepest self and help us see all of the negativity that's in us and all of the ways we've been programmed that are actually not for our highest freedom. And they can also act as a suppression tool. It depends on your ego. It depends on really how willing you are. And it depends on what your actual original intention was. There's a lot of people in this lineage, like teacher level, who, from what I have perceived, have really gone down that path out of ego. Like, it's an image thing. It's a spiritual narcissism role in this life. And then there's people, who just want to show up and sing bhajans to Source, and that's beautiful. Like, that's awesome. Like there's all of these different ways we can engage with spirituality. And what is most important is that we find what is truly authentic to ourselves, because that is source. Source is just authentic expression and authentic flow and authentic desire and authentic creation. And so, you know, a lot of what I have found in the Kaleshwar lineage over time, while yes, some of what I said in previous videos is true, that I'm very grateful, you know, for what I found. Also, I don't recommend that people try to go down that path, because it's an intense path to go down. And there are so many beautiful healing modalities in this world that don't require really intense yogic work and really, really intense energetic work. You know, this is, for me in this process, this has been a 3-year process. I'm just now at the completion point of that 3-year process after finding this lineage. And again, it's been tied to some of the other larger planetary karma work I've been doing and supporting just through my personal journey on this planet. And as time has gone on, it's just become more and more and more clear to me how out of alignment, you know, this lineage has truly been in this world, and how there really has been a lot of spiritual narcissism wrapped in a disguise of devotion. Devotion can look a lot of different ways, and I don't see a lot of devotion to life in this lineage, actually. I see a lot of devotion to people's spiritual egos, and I see a lot of devotion to a being that was powerful, who demonstrated some powerful things that people have bought into as the end all be all. And, you know, that's sad. It's sad to see that. But also what is beautiful is we can wake up from that, and everyone has an opportunity, you know, everyone has an opportunity to see that they were in a cult, and that while, yeah, like every spiritual group on the planet is technically like a cult, you know, there's different levels of cult, you know, and there's different levels of control that happen in cults. And what a lot of humans have not been able to see and perceive is the consciousness entity of the cult, and how strong it is, and how much influence does it have over you. And, you know, when beings start, you know, playing with power in the ways that they have in a cult like this, it becomes dangerous for souls. It becomes dangerous for the planet. And a lot of beings in this cult have not fully realized what they've been doing, because they've been operating, you know, from a place of spiritual narcissism, and that can blind us. You know, it can blind us to why we got sucked into it, and like why we feel this deep devotion, you know, to this being who demonstrated some powerful things, who could not, you know, deliver teachings in any sort of coherent way. You know, like, I loved Kaleshwar, you know, like I still do. Like, I still like I still view him as a brother. Also, at the same time, he has fucked up on this planet multiple times, like a lot in the past. And it's because of this sort of stuff. It's because of sorcery. And you guys need to know that. Like, you guys need to know, like, we are also dealing with that on a planetary scale right now with like the Epstein files. What has come out in the Epstein files is actual evidence of a very large satanic cult on this planet. The rise of the Antichrist frequency has been occurring for a long time on this planet. Christ came 2,000 years ago, and when the pure Christ energy breaches a planetary matrix that has been in such an inverted state, in such a negatively oriented state for a long time, that immediately forces the rise of the Antichrist. It forces all of the shit out into the light. And that's what's starting to happen. Yet a lot of Antichrist consciousness, which can sound scary, but that is just the shadow, right? Like, that's just the opposite of true Christ consciousness. The Antichrist consciousness hides in the shadows. You know, like, it's tricky. It's the illusion, right? Like, the Antichrist, Satan consciousness, is intended to cover the light, to hide the light from you. Yet on this planet, it has gotten way out of control at times, both on a very large scale with the cult of Baal. That is the larger satanic cult that has been running on this planet. And then you have smaller subsets of that happening in various ways. one thing that I want to mention related to that is that the cult of Baal, which has been part of the Jeffrey Epstein ring, this very large group of powerful people on the planet who engage in ritual and sacrifice for the purpose of gaining power, that is an antichrist mechanism, okay? That same mechanism is running in the Kaleshwar lineage in a slightly different way. The cult of Baal does blood sacrifice. They kill beings. They operate in an absolutely true antichrist frequency. However, they also talk about charging energy, needing to do certain rituals to charge their energy, which is some of the exact same language used in the Kaleshwar lineage regarding charging energy. When you have to charge your energy all the time through ritual and mantra practice and yantras and all sorts of stuff, you do not have true power of your own. You are seeking power outside of yourself. You are making a trade with an entity, not source. Be very clear about that. Be very clear about that. Source does not just give you power by doing a mantra. That's not how it works. That is sorcery. We can use mantras to awaken parts of ourselves, to awaken consciousness. And then when we do that and we learn more about our soul and what sort of maybe negativity or karmas we've been holding that we can heal and transform, then we call our power back to us, and then our soul becomes inherently more powerful through shamanic processes. We might have, a relational issue with someone and they have a little power over us, and we have to reorganize that power dynamic and bring some of our soul power back to us. Traumatic events, are things that sometimes make us lose our soul power because we've now, gone into a state of fear or diminishment, and we then need to figure out, like, where have we given our power over? These are natural ways of reacquiring power. When we are simply engaging in ritual and these other practices constantly for the purpose of charging energy and gaining power, that is an antichrist mechanism, because what you are actually doing is that you are feeding the egregore of the lineage. There is a large-scale consciousness entity that is now dying that has been feeding people in this lineage. You're actually not in direct communion with Source when you engage in this lineage's practices, unless you go through a process of completely disengaging and detaching those practices from the lineage and starting to truly come into your own source communion and starting to truly know yourself as source. You don't have to pour water on statues. You don't have to engage in these practices every damn day to maintain a certain state of consciousness. That's a lie. That's like the antichrist lie right there that keeps people trapped in these rigid dogmatic states of being that really are not source. And so I found, this similarity between the two cults and want to speak to that because I think that's important for people to know, for people to recognize that this idea of charging energy, through these processes, while, you can do that, it's where's the energy coming from? Is it actually source energy? Is it actually source energy, or are you borrowing that energy? Is that a trade that you're making? Because there's a lot of trading that goes on in this lineage. There's this idea of having to sacrifice, parts of yourself and sacrifice your freedom, to participate in this lineage to gain mastery and liberation. But that doesn't seem to make sense, does it? So, there's a lot of things that we can start to psychologically unpack, related to these sorts of dynamics on the planet and these sorts of group dynamics that play out. And we can start to better understand why they play out. And I've spoken to that in previous videos, these these karmic circumstances that humans have not wanted to understand. Humans have not wanted to believe that they have karma with a being like Kaleshwar. Like, you have karma with him. Like, he's a powerful being and you have karma with him. And that's why you ended up there. And same is true, for other situations in life, like the situation, going on in America where a lot of people have fallen prey to or fallen victim to like Donald Trump's propaganda and believing that he could be this like awesome leader for them when really he's one of the bad guys, and really he's just like feeding lies. And what has happened is this group cult consciousness dynamic where people can't see the truth because they've given so much of their power over to this being, this figure that they want to believe in. And so, part of this death process, has also been requiring, me to speak in these ways, because every time I speak truth in these ways, it kills part of that egregore, and it allows more souls to see the truth and to truly like find their spiritual flow in a way that is authentic and beautiful to them, that is not about dogmatic, rigid, secretive, ritual and practice and process for the purpose of gaining power and becoming secret masters on the globe, like, no. I haven't found a master in this lineage. I found a lot of people who have worshipped a powerful being who want to be like him because they actually have an ego trip that they're not willing to look at and they're not willing to acknowledge. I actually emailed someone in the lineage and said, like, you have a psychology background. Like, you need to use it to like examine the consciousness patterns of this lineage and to really see like what's the psychological dynamic in this lineage. Don't hide behind the supernatural and like amazing supernatural experiences. Those can happen. Like, those can happen in the light or the dark, like I've experienced a lot of supernatural stuff. And like, don't hide behind that. Like, actually look at like, what's the true psychology here? And I think that can be so difficult for us because when we have to like admit, that we've been operating in the darkness truly, or that we've been subject to certain like illusions of reality that just aren't true, yet we've given so much of our life and our life force to that can be really confronting, and a lot of people are, I think, having to wake up to that right now on the planet, even in relation to the Epstein cult and how pervasive that is, how wide and deep that web is, and how many leaders, powerful beings in this world really truly have not been operating in the light and yet have been wielding power. So it can happen in a kind of secular way. It's kind of secular because a lot of those leaders are actually part of the larger satanic cult. But it can also happen, in these ways where, we feel the like deep connection and we feel the pull, to go into something because it has had power over us. And it's an opportunity for us to wake up to that and come back to our true selves. So a lot of what's happened in these recent videos is the culmination of this long process I've been in, and I wanted to offer this video as a calm, coherent address related to kind of the bigger picture of what has been unfolding for me and why I have needed to do this. I've needed to speak truth in ways that are important for the good of all, but also to reclaim my power, to say that, these passivity and silence programs also of these spiritual lineages are really not aligned with source and really are spiritual bypassing mechanisms. And every time we engage in those spiritual bypassing mechanisms, that's actually an antichrist mechanism trying to keep us in the darkness, trying to keep us sucked into some system, belief, group, lineage, whatever, cult that has power over us. And so if you're one of those people who is like waking up to that now and seeing this and finding your way out, know that so many humans have had to go through that. Like, I've gone through it. We've all gone through it because that has been a pervasive way of operating on this planet. And because of where humans have been at in their state of consciousness, like not really truly operating from their soul's highest empowerment, it's been very easy for many humans to just give over their power, to other people and other groups or belief systems, rather than really examining like what feels right and true to us individually, and what brings us joy and excitement. And like, if we're not allowed to follow that because we have to engage in something else, well, something's wrong, or if we're, caught in this loop, of like ritual, it's like, there's nothing wrong with ritual. Ritual can actually be very good for the human brain. Like, the human brain needs some ritual to kind of anchor new truth and to anchor new states of consciousness. Yet that can happen in a lot of different ways. And sometimes we fall into patterns with ritual, where then we've given our power over to like the ritual, right? Like, it's no longer this authentic flow that's happening with nature and with the universe, but it is now just this thing that we are repeating over and over as a pattern, which, when that usually starts to happen, that's a sign that we actually aren't like in our authentic power and flow and source intelligence, because we're just looping. So I wanted to offer this today as another reflection point related to cults, related to spirituality, related to the evolution of both on this planet, related to the ways in which we have all been fooled by powerful beings before, and the ways in which we have the opportunity to awaken to that now. So this death process that I've engaged in, while at times may have come across as a bit fierce or intense, in some ways, this lineage might say, oh, that's negativity. There's all this negativity coming at us. No, it's just truth. It's just your unintegrated shadow that's being reflected back to you now for you to integrate. That's all. And that's how it works. That's how life works. You don't have to run or hide from the negativity, but you do have to face it, and you do have to face your unintegrated shadow. And when a lineage like this has been operating in such high states of power, with high spiritual technology, with the ability to influence souls in very profound ways, and the ability to influence the earth matrix in very profound ways, if that's happening in a way that is not for the highest benefit and highest good of all, and is truly just feeding shadow, then that needs to be shut down. So that's what's happening now. That's what's happening with my process, calling for the dissolution of the lineage, and calling for the death of it, and calling for the death, of the states of consciousness that have allowed this to occur, and have allowed people to stay asleep to their own ego distortions and spiritual narcissism. So I love you all. This is an act of love. Truth telling is an act of love, and sometimes it doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end of that truth telling. And we don't need to hide from it. We don't need to call it negativity. We can just own that it's the truth and move forward. Okay. I love you all. Bye for now.